Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell and student Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be talking about a little bit of an update of what's going on in China. This is January 19th, and it will be the 1 year since my mother passed away from COVID. She was in a nursing home, for the ones that don't know, and last year during the Omicron wave, she passed away. What happened was that it was quick. You know, she started having breathing problems. She already had a lot of comorbidities. She had COPD. She had cardiac problems. She had diabetes. She had a lot of problems. And she contracted SARS-CoV-2, started having the pulmonary distress. They did X-rays. They, did the testing to determine if she had COVID. She tested positive. She was vaccinated. Everyone that's in the nursing home had to be. And she passed away pretty quickly. She had pulmonary distress that accelerated pretty rapidly, and then her heart failed because of the stress, the pulmonary stress. So this is reaching that year mark for her death. So transitioning to what's going on in China. In the news, it has been sort of telegraphed that a lot of CCP members, and I've mentioned this in a previous video, a lot of CCP members are getting sick and passing away from this. So it's not just of the common person that doesn't really have that great of healthcare, but of elites that have good healthcare. So that's an important data point to look at. In addition, the crematoriums are still full. They're still packed, with the queue. So the death toll is pretty high in China, probably way higher than what they're suggesting. Numbers that they're saying, the CCP are saying, seem to be maybe one city, not the whole country. The numbers that they're saying that are dying from their particular wave, this white lung wave, are like the numbers that are coming out of Beijing, not the whole country. So they're not being forthright in the number of cases and the number of deaths. There's lots of videos out there that this is not the normal death rate, and it's not just a little bit above a little bit above the normal death rate. So, just a little bit of an excess of deaths. It's much, much higher in China. So, and then, they telegraph to their population, the ruling party, the CCP, right? They're telegraphing to the population, oh, this is just going to be, a normal cold season, right? Or, it's going to be mild. But yet they have hospitals that are full, running out of drugs. And I want to bring up this point here. So as the cases are increasing, as the cases of hospitalizations are increasing, as the deaths are increasing in China, as the wave starts to propagate from the larger cities to the smaller cities and rural areas, we're going to see kind of, this thing bounce around. If you look at a pool and you make a wave in the pool, and it's a calm pool at first, you can see the waves propagate, hit the wall, and then bounce back, right? Something similar is going to be happening in China. The wave starts in the larger cities, let's say like Beijing or Shanghai, and then it propagates, and then it will bounce back and come back in some form, some mutational form to the larger cities. So that's going to happen. So this thing, even though they might be approaching peak cases in the larger cities, they're not going to be approaching peak cases around the country. And there's going to be mutations that lead out. Now, the question is, why hasn't the white lung manifestations that we're seeing in China, why is it that we're not seeing that in India or in Italy or in the United States or in South America, right? Again, I mentioned this on a video. Is it that their antibodies are really bad? It's possible. Or they just don't have enough antibodies, at the societal level compared to some of these other countries that have had a lot of different waves, a lot of different variants, a lot of different people getting infected or getting vaccinated in the Western world. And so there's a set of antibodies in the population that are holding, that we are getting there. It's possible that we're getting their variant and it's just not as severe. All right. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that there's something different in China that's targeted. And I mentioned that in the early days, where I think that there is a potential targeting that's happening. Now, it could be something new that is taking a little bit more time to get here, and that no one has antibodies for this. And that's a possibility. Now the question is, was it something that was released, or was it something that emerged through mutation? Now, there's a lot that's unknown. We don't know. Those are questions that need to be answered. There is something that is odd, and why you don't see the white lung propagation in the Western world yet. Now, the CCP, as I have been contending for 3 years now, COVID crisis is going to lead to conflict in the Pacific. Flashpan being Taiwan. People coming out of China for travel because they've opened up, you would think that, well, they're having this big wave, they're having this big problem. They should say, they should recommend to the people, don't travel, because we're going through a wave, but the society is still open. Not only that, there should be some common sense from the population in China not to travel when they know that there's a crisis in their country. All right. So here's a lack of consideration, which is common in that country, a lack of consideration for others. All right. So where are their top destinations? Japan, Indonesia, South Korea. These are countries that are going to be part of the alliance for the United States if conflict does arise in Taiwan from China. Okay. So they're and we're seeing waves that are happening in Japan and in South Korea of the variants that are in China, but they don't have the severity like they have in China. Again, their healthcare has crashed. Is that a component of it? An analog to that was the big wave in India. Their healthcare crashed and many people died. They couldn't process all the bodies. Very similar to what's going on in China. It seemed as though the problem with India is that they had an inadequate level of antibodies in the population, but they haven't had a wave since. So what's going on? There's something weird going. Something is odd about this Chinese white lung wave. All right. And it almost seems as though the CCP wants to spread it. Now, as I've been contending for a long time, and there's about, the fifth cocktail, the HIV homology, and the early early days in Wuhan in December and in January, there were a lot of talk and there was a lot of experimentation that was going on, and some experimentation also happened in the United States, but a lot of experimentation repurposing HIV drugs for treating SARS-CoV-2. All right. You got to remember that the Wuhan lab did the HIV homology merger on the spike protein. They have researchers that know a whole lot about HIV and spike proteins. All right. It's odd to use an exotic drug like Azvudine, which is a reverse transcription drug, and they're using that in China instead of some of the other methods like monoclonal antibodies or some of these other drugs. I don't want to use the names because it usually strikes the channel, but you know what they are, and they're cheap. Parasitic, veterinarian type medications, right? Pennies on the dollar to make. Why are they going full bore on a reverse transcriptional inhibitor for HIV? And these are some questions, but I think it points to that they know about the integration with human line 1, and they're trying to prevent it. Does it prevent it or not? I don't know. But Azvudine is an HIV reverse transcriptional drug. All right. And that is their primary drug to use in China. So that is another data point that suggests that maybe something is different in China that they know about. And that it goes back to get them exposed to it. Some will die. And there's a leader in the scientific community in China that stated another 10 million people that die in China is not a big deal. Is what they said. All right. Because they have 1.5 or 1.4 billion people. They can take a 10 million hit. This is the thing that people don't understand. The United States can't take a 10 million hit or a 20 million hit or a 30 million hit or even a 100 million hit. The Chinese can. They have too many people in their country. And this is why I think the United States was moving towards different unconventional warfare techniques that are a little bit more quiet, right? Versus the big bomb, right? All right, like nuclear weapons. They want to use something that's a little bit quieter, right? And this is why biological warfare starts, right? And I think we're in the throes of it right now. So it's so they're getting the Pacific Rim sick of the Allied forces. They're trying to speed up the exposure in their country, and they don't care about the collateral damage because they know that the collateral damage will be that it won't be so severe that it brings down the population by 30-40%. It's not going to happen in China. So they can't accept the collateral damage. They will get the antibodies quicker by speeding this through their population. And this thing's going to propagate if it catches in the rest of the world for at least 6 months, because different regions are going to get sick at different times for at least 6 months. It might go for the whole year. all right? But this thing is going to be a problem or be on the radar for another 6 months. What does surprise me is that it hasn't taken hold in severity in other countries outside of China, other than two bellwether areas, and that is Japan and South Korea. So why is that? Is it that it's just creeping up, or is it that we have enough antibodies to stop it? We don't know. That no one knows that answer, all right? But I find it very odd that something new in this presentation at the clinic in China, in the hospitals in China, where you're hearing about the almost instantaneous white herring, um, almost kind of like herpes like breakout on the face, this black hairy tongue syndrome that they have, swelling of the eyes. There's an edema, periorbital edema. The white lung, obviously, which is severe pneumonia. The cardiac arrest, the heart failure that happens because of the white lung. These are all different presentations. Something is different about this. What is it? What is it? And why hasn't it spread? All right. And why is it that the CCP is going in kind of a war mode for their healthcare, using the Azvudine medication, which is an HIV reverse transcriptional inhibitor? Supposedly, SARS-CoV-2 is not a retrovirus. All right. But we do know that integration is taking place through this human line 1. They may know something because, again, they know a whole lot about HIV homology and spike proteins for beta coronaviruses. They may know something that we know, or maybe we do know it, and they're saying, okay, something new is happening and we're trying to prevent the integration. But the data point, another data point pointing to this similarity between HIV treatment and this whole arc of development in SARS, going all the way back to the early days when myocarditis was being studied in rabbits by Barrick, in the 1980s. Something doesn't make sense. Why are they using a much more exotic drug like Azvudine versus some of the other cheaper, anti-parasitic drugs? Why? Why is that? And with so many people that they have in their country, why haven't they developed a monoclonal antibody? Because they have, there are people that have healed from this, and they have antibodies. They can purify these things. So something's not making sense here. There's more questions now because of this white lung wave in China than before it. It seemed as though before this wave started happening in China, things started to be moving towards a post-COVID era, right? You'd still be in an endemic phase, but we're moving out of the pandemic phase, and we may still be in the endemic. You may be still going into the endemic phase, but there's a dynamic that's different here. It's different, and I don't know if it's going to be long lasting, or is this something that's just more short term. We don't know, and there's a geopolitical component to this. And it's like they're having a lot of economic problems in China, right? They had a growth of 3%. Supposedly, that's been decades since they've had growth of 3%. And that's their official number. Who knows what the real number is? It may be even negative. Who knows? But they're telegraphing the official number of 3% or so, maybe 3.4 or whatever it is. And I believe the IMF was predicting, I think it was like for next year for China, I think it was like in the 4s or low 5s. I think it was like maybe high 4s, 4.8 or 4.7, something like that, maybe 4.5 for their economy growth. Recently, we've been seeing a tick up in oil because they're getting back online. So that's a sign of economic growth, or at least prediction, but those are contracts that are 30 days out. When you look at the spot price. But there are stories about plants shut down for a longer duration because of the holiday, because they don't have any orders. Plus they have workers that are sick. So it doesn't seem like they have the workers or the orders to be able to even have a factory open. So I'm not sure why the IMF thinks that there's going to be growth, over and above what they published last year. But there's an economic problem that's starting to brew, and especially in real estate. They built out these ghost cities and no one's living in them. But yet the debt of the municipality has been incurred, and they can't. How do you afford that debt if no one's there? So there's a big implosion. There's a big crisis economically. So they're dealing with an economic crisis. They're dealing with a political crisis. They're dealing with a health crisis. They're dealing with a international affairs crisis. Now, there's something called the military, I believe it's called the military order number 1, which happens around this time of the year, where they are doing the planning. It didn't come out. So the ones that analyze China, and that's their wheelhouse, is just analyzing China, are saying that the CCP's soldiers, the army of the Chinese, are sick, which totally makes sense with this whole white lung wave, right? And that this order, this military order number 1, is being postponed, all right? But they're not saying that their military is sick, nor did we say our military was sick. So they may be weaker. And, this goes back to like, are we throwing stuff that falls into the category of biological warfare to weaken the enemy, to prevent them to do the incursion on Taiwan? I think that there's enough data points to suggest we are. But let's keep, watching what's going on. It's an evolving story. There are some pieces that just don't make sense yet. Why hasn't it spread? Other than all we know is that it's spread to, a few countries. But the presentation is totally different than what's in China. Is it targeted, or is it antibody related? Or is it something new that's in China that isn't being picked up in other countries yet? We don't know. But they're using Azvudine as a major drug to treat this white lung wave that's happening in China. That's strange. That's very strange. All right. Why are they using HIV drugs for a beta coronavirus? Another data point that suggests the connection between HIV and SARS-CoV-2. Thank you for listening. And please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the nanosilvers, they'll neutralize pathogens. Get the C60, that is a strong antioxidant that will neutralize the reactive oxygen species and boost up your mitochondrial health and your cellular health. Get the turmeric, that'll bring down inflammation. Get ashwagandha, it'll control your blood glucose levels and also reduce inflammation. And I have an all-natural deodorant bar that's made by Rainbow Herbals in citrus, and the other scent is peppermint tea tree. And I have a lot of other great supplements. You need your B vitamins, you need your vitamin C, and your zinc, and your magnesium, and resveratrol is really good. And to control hormonal levels and your endocrine system. Lignans is a powder that I take with my probiotic in the afternoon. I have probiotics and prebiotics that you should be getting. So I have a lot of really good supplements that will boost up your health, improve your immune system, and give you the energy that you need. I have Good Night formula that is melatonin and tryptophan. If you get proper sleep, especially if you get the 3 cycles of REM sleep, you're going to be healing your body, and you're going to be more clear with your mind, right? I also have Clarity Factor to give you the energy to do long hours, to do study. I take it twice a day, so I can be doing my studying. So I have a lot of really good supplements, high quality. All right. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and that will help support my channel. Please go to my different channels. I have 6 channels. I have 3 YouTube channels. Please subscribe to all of them. All the links are in the description. And go to my Rumble, Bitchute, and Brighteon Channel, and they'll have the backups. Some videos can stay up on YouTube depending on the content, some can't. All right. So, but you'll be able to find all my content on somewhere on those 6 channels. Subscribe to them. Go to my Patreon account and help support my work that way. In addition, go to the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description. That's where you go to my store, but you can also donate on the homepage, and you can donate through Stripe or PayPal. You can also buy me a coffee. Links in the description of all my videos to help also support my work. Some people are overseas. I don't ship overseas my products, but if you want to support my work, the best way to do that, if you are from a different country, is to support me by going to the Patreon account and subscribing there for a nominal fee, or donating on my homepage on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, or buy me a coffee. So that way you can donate to help cover this work. But in parting, I think that there is something different in China that is happening. The question is, what is it, and will it be coming to us? The clinical presentations are different than the previous waves that we've seen, and similar but different during the Wuhan wave in 2019 and early 2020. What is it? Why is it different? Those are questions that need to be answered to understand the evolving dynamic that is happening. But I find it very odd and telling that Azvudine is being used as a antiviral drug for SARS-CoV-2 in China. And that's for a reverse transcription. I think that they're trying to prevent human line 1 integration. That's my gut feeling. And they could be using other drugs that are far cheaper to make. So I don't understand what the hell is going on in China. All right. Thank you for listening. Please support my work and have a good day.